began with a moment that no one inside Brussels could fully control, yet everyone immediately understood would change the trajectory of the European Union's digital future. What had been quietly developing behind layers of policy drafts and closed-door negotiations suddenly burst into the open when Elon Musk publicly challenged the authority of Ursula von der Leyen, transforming what should have been a routine regulatory update into a high-stakes confrontation that now threatens to redefine the balance of power between governments and global tech influence. Before we roll the footage, just one thing. If you enjoy our work, drop a like and hit subscribe. Over 98% of you are watching without subscribing. Let's change that right now. It's free for you, but it fuels everything we do. Subscribed? Perfect. Now enjoy the video. In the days leading up to the explosion, officials within the European Commission had been refining a controversial framework aimed at tightening control over digital platforms operating across Europe, a move they argued was necessary to protect democratic institutions, combat misinformation, and enforce accountability in an increasingly volatile online ecosystem. However, according to insiders who later spoke to journalists at BBC, the tone of internal discussions had shifted from cautious optimism to quiet concern as early drafts revealed broader enforcement mechanisms than initially anticipated, including sweeping compliance requirements that critics feared could stifle innovation and restrict open digital discourse. The situation escalated dramatically when a leaked version of the proposal surfaced, triggering immediate reactions across political, technological and financial circles, as analysts from The Guardian described the measures as ambitious but potentially overreaching, while warning that the European Union was stepping into a delicate space where regulation and control could easily blur into one another. It was within this charged atmosphere that Musk intervened, not through traditional diplomatic channels, but via a direct and highly visible public statement that framed the proposal not as governance, but as an aggressive consolidation of institutional power. His response was swift, deliberate, and unmistakably confrontational, as he argued that innovation could not thrive under what he described as an environment of fear and excessive oversight. And a statement that resonated instantly with millions online while simultaneously provoking sharp criticism from policymakers who viewed his intervention as an unacceptable intrusion into sovereign decision-making. Within hours, the debate had spilled far beyond Brussels, evolving into a global conversation about the limits of regulatory authority in the digital age and the role that influential private actors should, or should not, play in shaping public policy. As tensions intensified, reports began to emerge of an unannounced meeting between Musk and several members of the European Parliament, a development that added a new layer of complexity to an already volatile situation, as it suggested that the confrontation was no longer confined to public rhetoric but had entered the realm of direct political engagement. According to sources familiar with the discussion, Musk did not approach the meeting as a passive observer, but as an active participant determined to push for a fundamental reconsideration of the proposed framework, emphasising the long-term risks of regulatory overreach on Europe's competitiveness in the global tech landscape. The reaction within EU institutions was immediate and deeply divided, as some officials rallied behind von der Leyen's position, insisting that democratic governance must remain firmly in the hands of elected bodies, while others began to question whether the Commission had underestimated the broader implications of its approach, particularly in a rapidly evolving digital environment where innovation often outpaces regulation. This internal tension was further amplified by a wave of public engagement, and as social media platforms became battlegrounds for competing narratives, with supporters of stricter oversight arguing that accountability was long overdue, while critics warned that excessive control could undermine the very freedoms the European Union seeks to protect. A flash survey conducted by researchers at Oxford University captured this growing divide, revealing a near-even split between those who supported the proposed measures and those who feared their potential consequences, a result that underscored the complexity of the issue and the difficulty of forging consensus in an increasingly polarised environment. At the same time, a coalition of European tech leaders issued a strongly worded statement, later reported by Reuters, warning that the proposed regulations could have unintended economic consequences, including reduced investment, slower innovation, and a potential exodus of talent to less restrictive markets. Financial markets responded with caution as technology stocks across Europe experienced noticeable volatility, reflecting investor uncertainty about the future regulatory landscape and its impact on growth prospects, while political analysts began to describe the unfolding situation as a defining moment for the European Union's digital strategy. Coverage by CNN framed the confrontation as emblematic of a broader global struggle between state authority and private influence, highlighting the unique position of figures like Musk, whose reach extends far beyond traditional corporate boundaries. The international dimension of the crisis quickly became apparent as policymakers in the United States monitored developments closely, recognising that the European Union's decisions could set precedents with far-reaching implications for global tech regulation, while observers in China and India assessed the situation through their own strategic lenses, each considering how shifts in European policy might influence their domestic approaches to digital governance. In this sense, what began as a regional policy dispute had evolved into a focal point for a much larger conversation about the future of power in a connected world. Back in Brussels, von der Leyen addressed the growing controversy with a firm and carefully calibrated message, asserting that Europe's commitment to its values would not be compromised by external pressure. A statement that reinforced her position while also raising the stakes of the confrontation. Musk's subsequent response, in which he called for greater transparency and public involvement in the decision-making process, reignited the debate and intensified calls for broader consultation. As activists, lawmakers and industry leaders demanded a more inclusive approach to shaping the continent's digital future, amid mounting pressure, a group of lawmakers proposed a temporary pause on the implementation of the policy, arguing that additional dialogue was necessary to bridge the widening gap between competing perspectives, a move that signalled a potential shift in momentum, while also highlighting the challenges of navigating such a complex and high-profile issue. Whether this development represents a strategic recalibration or a genuine reconsideration remains unclear, but it has undoubtedly altered the dynamics of the debate and created space for new possibilities to emerge. What makes this moment particularly significant is not simply the clash between two high-profile figures, but the broader questions it raises about the nature of authority, accountability, and influence in the modern world, where technological power can rival and sometimes challenge traditional political structures. As the European Union grapples with these questions, it must also contend with the practical realities of governance in an era defined by rapid change, where decisions made today can have lasting consequences for innovation, economic growth and democratic stability. The outcome of this confrontation remains uncertain, but its implications are already being felt across multiple domains, from policy and politics to markets and public opinion, as stakeholders on all sides seek to shape the narrative and influence the direction of future developments. For some, this is a necessary reckoning that will ultimately strengthen democratic institutions and ensure greater accountability in the digital sphere. For others, it is a warning sign that the balance between regulation and freedom is becoming increasingly fragile. As events continue to unfold, the central question persists. Can a sustainable equilibrium be achieved between the need for oversight and the imperative of innovation? Or are we witnessing the early stages of a deeper and more enduring conflict that will redefine the relationship between governments and global technology leaders? And perhaps more importantly, Now, who will ultimately decide the rules that govern this new landscape and on what terms? Because if this moment has revealed anything, it is that the lines between public authority and private influence are no longer as clear as they once seemed, and the decisions made in response to this crisis will resonate far beyond the immediate context, shaping the future of digital governance for years to come. So as the tension lingers and the next moves are carefully calculated behind the scenes, one cannot help but wonder whether this is merely a temporary clash or the beginning of a fundamental shift in how power is exercised in the 21st century, a question that remains unanswered but impossible to ignore.